When you're starting to discern your vocation, or if you've already been discerning for a while, it can be overwhelming. Here are 7 tips that might help. Tip 1, don't forget your first call. We're all called to the same primary vocation, holiness. This universal call to holiness is foundational for hearing the call to a particular vocation. It means that we are called to be disciples of Jesus Christ and to become more like him each day. Knowing that we're already called by name, by the Lord of life, into a relationship with him can be a deep comfort throughout the vocational discernment process, while we're listening to hear for a particular way he might be calling. We are already called by him. We're not left out or forgotten. Tip 2, make time to learn about yourself. Taking the time to learn about yourself is never wasted because it allows you to better know how and where to give of yourself back to God. Part of growing in holiness means coming to know our strengths, our weaknesses, our desires, our sinfulness, and the ways of loving the Lord and others that are particular to us. Knowing ourselves more deeply helps us to grow in our relationship with Jesus because it allows us to be ever more authentically ourselves before him. It also helps us to see more clearly just how we are made and how all the things that make us, us, can give us hints towards what kind of vocation we're suited to. Receiving our vocation as a gift from God that we return in love to him is a hugely vulnerable thing. Coming to know ourselves more and seeing how Jesus loves us with all of our woundedness and brokenness and our joys and gifts can help us to be courageous in responding to his call. Tip 3, don't wait to grow in virtue. We can be intentional about how we grow in holiness and use our time of discernment well. And by growing in virtue, we become more freely able to respond to any call from God, whether it's a big one, like a vocation, or a small daily one, like getting up when the alarm goes off. In the path to holiness, virtues are something that we can develop that will help us both now, but also once we discern and enter into a vocation. Virtues are stably expressed habits that we can possess through cooperating with God's grace. They help us to live a life that is conformed to Jesus, who is perfect in all the virtues. They act in opposition to the 7 deadly sins of lust, gluttony, greed, sloth, wrath, envy, and pride. Virtues are divided into 2 categories, theological and cardinal. There are 3 theological virtues, faith, hope, and charity. These virtues are supernatural virtues given by God's grace at baptism. We are then called to nurture them through doing things that exercise them, and ultimately by asking God, who is the source of these virtues, to continue increasing them in us. There are 4 cardinal virtues, also called moral virtues: prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. These virtues are natural virtues, ones that are a part of our nature. Growing in these virtues helps us become more fully ourselves because we begin to live as we were intended to live. with reason and will governing our passions and desires. Growing in virtue means we're more fully able to avoid sin and choose the good. While you're navigating your vocation, taking the time now to grow in virtue strengthens you to ever better respond to God's call and give of yourself wherever your vocation leads you. There are some really great resources on the vices and virtues if you're interested in learning more. We'll try and link some of them in the description below. Tip 4. Be wary of easy lies. There are many lies that can derail us in our spiritual lives, especially in times when we're discerning big things. Being aware of the lies is a big step for not feeding into them, because it allows us to acknowledge them for what they are, lies, to let go of them, and then to turn to God for the truth, exercising those virtues of faith, hope, and charity, and some of the cardinal virtues in the process. I'm going to speak about some of the common lies that we can sometimes get stuck in. One of these is that our vocation is somehow something hidden that God will only reveal to us when we've searched well enough for it. The truth is that God doesn't hide things from us, though He does lead us to things according to His timing, which is always perfect and directed towards our good. Another lie is that maybe we're not called to something after all. Maybe God has forgotten us. This is never true. God is incapable of holding Himself back from us, and He always calls us into a relationship with Him and to the universal call of holiness that we've already spoken about. It may be true that some people may not end up getting married or becoming a priest or consecrated person. But God always has a plan for our lives, even if that plan is not typical. There are many saints whose calls were atypical, but they lived lives of holiness nonetheless. A final lie to mention here, though there can be many more that people experience, is the lie that we are simply missing God's call, that He is calling, but we're too dense or broken to hear Him. This isn't true. God knows exactly how to speak to us in a way that we can hear Him. And though it may be true that at times we're not really looking to hear God's voice because of fear or wounds or something like that, God can even speak in that. He is gentle and loving and desires our good. If we are slowly taking the time to grow in relationship with God and opening our hearts to His grace through the sacraments, Mass, seeking virtue, and regular prayer, we will begin to recognize better how He's speaking. So, if we find ourselves swirling when trying to sort through the vocational question, stop. Take a breath. Listen and ask yourself if there are any lies that have snuck in that you've started to believe. Then, ask the Lord for a broom and start sweeping them out to make space for His truth. Tip 5. Don't be afraid to take one step forward. It's possible to experience analysis paralysis and to get stuck while discerning a vocation. Often it happens because we want to know the full picture of what God is calling us to before we make a step. But that's most often not how God works. Generally, He speaks to us in the concrete steps that we take as we come to know His will. For example, that may mean registering for that come and see retreat that you've been thinking about, or attending Catholic dating events, speaking with the vocations director of the diocese, or talking to that guy or girl that you like. In taking steps like these, we open our hearts for God to speak through the movements of our hearts and to give more clarity about where He is leading. For example, if a man enters the seminary, it's not a done deal that he will become a priest. It's one step of a whole series of steps of discernment. God speaks before a man joins the seminary, at the come and see, during the interview process, during the years of seminary formation, and right up until the time has come to look toward ordination. At each step of the vocation journey, God speaks to us. We don't have to have complete certainty at any one step before we move forward. And the help of others is part of the process. Spiritual directors, vocations directors, and formators, those who form people preparing to enter a vocation, can help us to hear God as we move through these concrete decisions during our discernment. This is also where the virtues come back in, because to take steps often takes a great deal of courage. Courage is a virtue, and it's helpful to ask God to help us grow in courage so that we can keep taking steps, even when things might be out of our comfort zone. Tip 6, choose and see. This is related to the last point. Sometimes we can feel drawn to more than one vocation at a time, and that can get us stuck. Though this isn't a one-size-fits-all approach, most spiritual directors and vocation directors will tell those who, for example, are feeling drawn both to marriage and to the priesthood, that it's wisest to discern one vocation at a time. It can be more difficult to hear how God is directing and leading us when our hearts are being pulled in two different and very good directions. It's also true that saying yes to one vocation means sacrificing the goods that come with the other. For example, becoming a priest means sacrificing the goods of marriage and family. Discerning one vocation at a time can help make some space for recognizing where God is providing the grace to say yes to whatever sacrifices will come regarding a particular vocation, but also to get to know the desires of our hearts within the context of one vocation. Tip 7, don't be afraid of the mess. This is a big one. Discernment can be a process that has great joy, but it can also be one where we experience pain as well. Whether it's not finding a religious order that seems to be a good home, or not having a concrete sense of being called to one of the vocational paths, or having trouble dating and finding someone whom you could marry. There are lots of painful times in vocational discernment. This pain is very normal, even though it's hard to experience. You're not alone. All of it, even the pain, is something that God can speak through and use to bring us where He wants us to be. All of our discernment experiences are also a great reminder of why God calls us to live in communion with others. Having friends and other supports that you can talk to about your experience is so necessary. Even Jesus had close friends that He relied on for comfort and companionship. Regardless of where you're at in your vocational journey, we hope that some of these tips can be helpful lenses to look through as you go along the road. Our Blessed Mother is there with you every step of the way, and we're praying for you. You're always welcome to reach out to our Archdiocesan Vocations Director at vocations@ottawa-cornwall.ca. God bless.